We wrote 1441 to give Iraq one last chance. Iraq is not so far taking that one last chance.
The American presence in the Gulf is getting stronger by the day. Tens of thousands of US soldiers are already stationed in Kuwait.
The Security Council didn't happen. But they could see American military preparations. They could.
The tempo of the military build-up made it more and more difficult, and
the whole time there was the pressure from the United States, because Saddam wasn't going to back down completely. They were going to remove it. This is where ultimately we were in a situation where you had then to decide, were you going to be with them, or you could have just taken yourself aside from it. I particularly was very anxious to try and find a different way through if I could. But in the end, if I couldn't, and if I came to the view that Saddam was not going to change his ways, then I was going to be with America. And that's the decision in the end you had to come to. You either were with America or not, and you left him in place, Saddam, or you didn't.
Prime ministers don't get elected to go to war. Now, by the time we came to Iraq, of course, we'd already fought.
He'd been downgraded from Foreign Secretary. Gordon was sitting.
Tony did centralise decisions in a small group.
Very conflicted because it was a difficult decision. Even if people like myself don't always show the emotion over it, because it's not particularly what I want to do or think is the right way of doing things, it doesn't mean to say you don't feel that emotion. But in the end, that can't determine your decision.
I don't remember him ever looking defeated during the Iraq process. I do remember him feeling. That was etched on his face many times. We didn't fail to notice that there were a very large number of people against this subject.
Dear Tony, the situation of the Iraqi people is already extremely fragile. Any disruption could lead to a humanitarian catastrophe. With some more time, sensible measures can be taken to reduce these risks and improve Iraq's prospects for... US preparations to date have been dominated by military considerations. Plans for the provision of humanitarian assistance during and following any conflict appear quite comprehensive, but rely on naive assumptions that there will be no major problem. More can be done to factor human...
You're convinced you're doing the right thing.
The march was a big thing. That was a lot of people, and I always had a golden rule on marches. If there's 5 people on a march, 50 people thought about going.
And the striking thing about it wasn't just the people.
My wife and daughter, who was 2 at the time, had gone to join the march complete.
My son was on that demonstration with his church, and he sent me a text and said...
The fact that so many people marched in that way, of course, you take account of that. It's not that you don't listen to it, but there is another point of view. But I'd already understood this was going to be extremely politically treacherous. But I'd already decided in my own mind that you can't take the decision on that basis. And therefore I thought, if I don't, for political reasons, if I back off this decision, which I think is the right thing to do, well, what does that say about me as Prime Minister?
Tonight, Britain is on the brink of war. For the Prime Minister, this is the final countdown.
I want to know what he has to say to all the innocent children he's about to sacrifice.
I want to ask him why, in a democratic society, he's going against the wishes of the people.
One thing I never did was disrespect the people who disagreed with me over it.
Mr. Blair, you're attacking Iraq with George Bush, and it's not dissimilar to what bin Laden or the Al-Qaeda network done to America. They killed 3,000 or more innocent victims. How many innocent victims are you going to kill, and how many people?
We used to think this was real masochism.
Whenever you take military action, it is true that innocent people die as well as guilty ones, but sometimes you have to take that action.
It is painful. I mean, of course it's painful. I mean, it's not possible for it to be otherwise, because you're talking about people's lives.
Don't you think it's going to exacerbate?
And no matter how much personal pain it causes you, your job is to take that decision. I think it's just, I can't put it in any other way than that. And if you're not prepared to do that, you shouldn't be in the job.
If this goes badly, you're finished, really, aren't you?
Well, let's wait and see, Trevor, shall we, about that, as to whether it goes badly, because I don't intend it to go badly. I'm working to get the second UN resolution.
At the United Nations, this is the man who's laboured night and day trying to save Tony Blair from his nightmare, war without a new UN resolution. But today, Britain's ambassador threw in the towel, accusing the French of...
I had to make the statement that diplomacy had nothing more to offer.
Given the situation, the co-sponsors have agreed that we will not pursue a vote on the draft UK-US-Spanish resolution. The co-sponsors reserve their right to take their own steps to secure the disarmament of Iraq.
Robin Cook, once Foreign Secretary, resigned from Tony Blair's cabinet. He said he couldn't support war without international agreement or domestic support.
My fellow citizens, events in Iraq have now reached the final days of decision. The United Nations Security Council has not lived up to its responsibilities. Many nations, however, do have the resolve and fortitude to act against this threat to peace. Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict.
Once you've made your decision and you're going down a particular path, then you carry on with it, but it's not. You're aware of course, that it's of huge consequence, what you're doing. And so the uppermost feeling is anxiety, because you don't know what comes next.
Good evening from Westminster, where Tony Blair's facing the biggest political battle of his career.
A parliamentary vote was being watched right around the world. Yeah, that was a big moment.
Amazingly tense. If we lose that vote, it just would have destroyed.
Tony was sitting in his office in the House of Commons, and MPs were being brought into him, 1s, 2s and 3s, and then other ministers were sitting in other rooms along that same corridor, where all the ministers have their offices.
Very fraught atmosphere, people not sleeping, people very worried. There was this immense arm twisting going on.
Outside tonight, in the final minutes before the vote, the crowds were large and angry. Inside, Labour loyalists were begging for every last vote.
Well, I'm here because if the war begins,
President Bush and the Prime Minister will be taking decisions to kill women and children and thousands of innocent Iraqis, and it would be wrong. This is a question of right and wrong.
The leader's responsibility is to lead. It's to take the decision and stand by the decision. And if, in the end, people condemn you for it, and public opinion moves against you on it, well, that's just the way it is.
The question most often posed is not why does it matter, but why does it matter so much?
There's no other way of doing the job, I think, with any form of integrity than that.
This is not the time to falter.
And the burden on Tony was far greater.
How brilliant was it? If you'd asked me before if loyalty was a good quality, I would have said, of course it is, but not always. It can make people...
The ayes to the right, 412. The noes to the left, 149.
I think you do pause. You do step back and think about the lives involved.
President Bush's dramatic 48-hour deadline given to Saddam Hussein and his sons, telling them to leave Iraq or face war, has just passed.
Well, today Saddam Hussein has promised victory in any war, vowing it will be the country's last battle.
Of course, now anxious at this time. Thousands of Iraqis have been trying to flee their country. Many have already crossed frontiers into neighboring countries.
To journalists, and there seems no sign that they're going to budge. Saddam Hussein is not leaving the country, and neither are his two sons. But for all this defiance, the truth is, for ordinary Iraqis, time is running out.
Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq. Tonight, British servicemen and women are engaged from air, land and sea. Their mission? To remove Saddam Hussein from power and disarm Iraq of its weapons of mass destruction.
But of course you remember these things. I mean, how could you not? And the film of explosions in Baghdad, thinking about the people who'd be killed. Yeah. I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the switchboard at number 10 put through a military officer who in very clipped voice told me that a Chinook had gone down with 8 Marines and 4 American servicemen, I think. That's when it really comes home to you.
This is Tony Blair, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I'm glad to be able to speak to you today to tell you that Saddam Hussein's regime is collapsing, that the years of brutality, oppression and fear are coming to an end. Our enemy is Saddam and his regime, not the Iraqi people. Our forces are friends and liberators of the Iraqi people, not your conquerors. And they will not stay in Iraq a day longer than is necessary. So it is in the spirit of friendship and goodwill that we now offer our help. Thank you.
I think they believe their own propaganda.